didn't know it went out the back door. I didn't know where he was at the time. I know he was there.
All right, joining us now is federal trial attorney Alexis Rosenberg. Alexis, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the air. I'm just going to start off by saying, hey, methinks she protests too much. What do you think about that particular evidence? I thought it was extremely powerful, the way she's protesting, going from story to story, seeking immunity, all these things running through her head, and you can hear her, you can hear the guilt in her voice as far as I'm concerned.
Your Honor, Michael, thank you for having me on. Her story is all over the place, and she seems very detached. I mean, at the end, we've got what appears to be her putting on fake tears. But people who are innocent and are trying to help the judge and don't feel that they did anything wrong do not say, I need immunity, I need immunity. I mean, what does she need immunity from if her story is accurate? It just, I'm not buying it. I think that, you know, if you're guilty, you're going to ask for immunity.
One of the things she says, Judge, on the phone call is that she wanted immunity because she wasn't telling the truth. She hadn't told the truth. That's what she wanted. I think at some point, she begins to pick up that this call might not be completely on the up and up.
Yeah, I think that she might, because she certainly does continue to spin and almost spiral out of control. But one of the other things, and Alexis, I want your thought on this, is I thought the prosecution did a really good job after playing these recordings. They put him, the husband, ex-husband, back on the stand, and he talked about her personality was consistent throughout the call, that she didn't change to another personality. And we know the defense from opening statements alludes to the fact that her personality was fragmented and she had more than one personality at the time she committed the crime. So I thought that was a very effective way. Do you think the jury picks up on that as they're presenting it?
I do. I think that was very powerful. The bottom line is, it doesn't seem that her personality is actually like she's switching between personalities. It just seems at the very tail end, she seems to really become more dramatic. She's much more detached. I mean, she's kind of just telling the story. I mean, going through a horrific situation, most people, not all people, of course, would have some emotional attachment. And it wasn't really until where she was saying, I'm not making this up. And, you know, generally when we have people say indicators like that, I'm not making this up, I'm telling the truth, usually is little signs that there are some lies that have been interwoven into those statements.
Yeah, and we know now quite a few lies that she told along the way. And one of the things, Michael, is it's an insanity defense. We know that, but it kind of shifts the burden to the state to prove she was sane, and they're already laying that groundwork through her husband. Yeah, they're laying that groundwork. And Alexis, I want to get your thoughts on this, because there is this multiple personality defense. And as I'm listening to her, and it's obvious she's, you know, protesting, and you get the sense that she's guilty of something. Is it, I mean, the expert that they call is going to have to be able to say, there's this other person residing, or a number of other people residing inside of her, who did not know right from wrong, even though the person you hear on that phone call does, and is aware that this other person, this other evil being inside of her, committed these acts. And now here she sits in this other person, the one that's more, people know more, the one that people see more consistently, is aware of those bad acts and doesn't want to be guilty for the acts of that other personality.
And that was a mouthful, Michael.
It was. How do you sell that to a jury?
I think it's going to be hard to sell to a jury. I mean, first of all, that defense to start with is a very difficult defense to be successful just out of the gate. I mean, it doesn't seem, and obviously they're going to put experts on that there were indicators or other things, but it doesn't seem that we've heard so far that there has been any indicators of her having multiple personalities before this. Now, we've heard some information about that she had a hard life, but you know, as a child, but that doesn't mean she has multiple personalities. That is a really hard defense. I mean, but you know, her attorneys are kind of stuck in a hard place. They've got to have some sort of defense for her, but I think it's going to be a very difficult sell to a jury.
But you said something to me, Michael, on the first day to piggyback on that, which was the defense isn't going to say that's what they're going to prove if they didn't have an expert in their corner that's going to say that. But
they got a guy from Yale.
Yeah, and that's who's going to say it. So I have to ask you this. Do you all remember, and Michael, I have to ask you this question. Farrah Fawcett was in a movie back in the day about having multiple personalities, and she burned a house, and she was accused of all these crimes, and it was exactly that she was in her right mind at different points, but at the time she committed the crime, she had a multiple personality in place, so to speak.
I mean, Alexis, at the end of the day, and I'll say this, there's precedent for this. I mean, in the world of psychology, this does happen, right? But one thing that one of our guests told us, Ashley, was, and it's exactly right, even if you have 6 personalities, you've got to show that each one of those personalities, or the one that committed the acts, did not know right from wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the issue is that there are so many lies, though. It just seems there are alleged lies. There's so many different stories going and circulating. It's not consistent, and I don't have a degree in psychology by any means, but I don't think it would be consistent with an expert getting up and saying that those multiple stories are consistent with having multiple personalities. The other thing is, to get back to what was brought up about the experts, we know as an attorney, you can find someone to pretty much, as an expert, for the right amount of money, get up on the stand and testify to what you want to support. Now, whether they're going to sustain a cross-examination or not is a different story, but you definitely can find someone to get up on the stand and testify to support your position. So I'm sure they do have an expert, and Yale is good, and I'm sure the prosecution is going to have an expert to counter that as well, because that's just, as we know, how it works.
And as I'm watching your face, you're smiling along with Alexis as she's saying that, because you know it to be true.
It's absolutely true, and she's exactly right. We are, in fact, anticipating a battle of the experts, right, at the end of the day. So that's how this will play out for sure. All right, Alexis, stand by. We do have to take a break, folks. When we come back, we're going to hear more of those recorded conversations between Letitia Stauch and her ex-husband. In one call, she even gave him the name of the man she said took Gannon. It's going to be our testimony of the day.
Quincy Brown. It was his pocket. He had his big baggy pants on, and in his pocket, the paper fell out, and on top of the paper was his ID, and it had his picture, Quincy Brown.
Joining us now, we still have with us federal trial attorney Alexis Rosenberg. And Alexis, the thing that really stood out to me, and I even had to comment, I felt like the voice that he was using, and at one point he said, "I can't understand you, Tisha, calm down," that this isn't the first time he's spoken to her when she's been distraught about something.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously is trying to get answers, and he is very upset because his son is missing. He's trying to stay very calm and get as much information as possible. I mean, getting her to talk and show these inconsistencies must have been very difficult for him, because if I was personally having that conversation, I don't know if I could stay that calm myself. But he was asking very pointed questions as well. I mean, how do you know it was Quincy Jones? And trying to really get some information from her. But Your Honor, I agree. He seems to know that he has to stay calm to be able to get straight answers from her, probably from previous experiences dealing with her.
Yeah, she seems like a drama queen for sure. And I can tell you what, there's about 2 or 3 different personalities I'm seeing just in that one phone call. If that helps the defense at all, I don't know. But here's my question to you, Alexis. How does a case like this even get to trial? I mean, this is a case with so much evidence against her. And as you said, the defense attorney might have been able to find an expert to suggest she had these issues, these mental issues that led to an insanity defense. But still, one has to ask the question, how does this even get to trial?
I mean, the bottom line is, if you have a client that refuses to take a deal, or there's not a deal on the table, or the deal isn't what they were hoping for, or they just really think that they're correct, because sometimes you have that, even though you advise them otherwise that this is a good plea deal, I recommend you take it. It's ultimately their decision. So there obviously something going on in the background. I mean, I'm not saying that she has multiple personalities from the testimony we've heard and what we've heard so far, but that doesn't also mean that she's the best judgment of what she should do either. So that's kind of how these get to trial.
And go ahead.
Essentially, what she was saying was she's probably crazy, but just not crazy if not to be not guilty of this crime. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking, Alexis.
And you know what's interesting is in the opening statements, the state said you're going to hear from an expert that the defense is going to present. But if it's not reasonable, don't believe it. So he's already saying it doesn't even sound reasonable, right? Whatever they're saying isn't something to believe. But let's talk about whether there's a deal on the table or not. And I know we have to go to a break. I'm going to give it back to you, Michael. But one thing I will say is we know if the jury finds insanity, then she goes to a state hospital versus a conviction as jail.
Yes. And if they're not offering any deal on the prosecution side, as a defense attorney, you roll the dice. Why not? All right, Alexis, stand by. We do have to take a break, folks. Coming up.